Beyonce, Cowboy Carter, album review. Let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning here tonight to chat about this latest album from Beyonce. You may have heard of her. You know who she is. Do I need to do the intro? Alright, I guess I'll do the intro. Beyonce, you know who she is. Pop megastar, one of the biggest names in all of music, and has been since the early 2000s when she broke off from Destiny's Child and started putting out her studio albums like Dangerously in Love. But for a while, I just personally was not drinking the Kool-Aid, while Dangerously in Love still has truly iconic singles that I do love. The album as a whole, I thought was okay at best, and if that was just okay at best, I honestly still to this day don't really like B-Day or her concept album I Am Sasha Fierce. But around the time of her 4 record, my thoughts on Beyonce and her music completely did a 180. This album to me felt bigger than anything that she had ever done. This thing felt absolutely gigantic. This came off as a pop celebration of just everything that has probably happened in the last 40 years of pop music or whatever it was at the time. But this thing felt huge. This thing had big shoes and Beyonce filled them, and I had a lot of the same thoughts on her self-titled album, albeit a little bit more of a modern sounding album. This to me, once again, felt larger than life, and until very recently was my favorite Beyonce record. And by the time Lemonade dropped, I mean, the girl was just a freaking force to be reckoned with. And if you missed it a few years ago, she did drop the Renaissance record, which I gave a 9 out of 10. I loved the damn thing, and honestly ever since it has become probably my favorite Beyonce record, just because this is once again in her discography an all-out celebration of pop, all things pop, and also her approach to hip house was one of the most really nice surprises of the year that it came out. Now this album here, let me tell you son, it's been hyped up quite a bit, mostly because this is Beyonce's country album, and let me tell you, I was not immune to the singles. I thought 16 Carriages and Texas Hold'em were both very enjoyable. Let's chat about the rest of this album, or should I say, giddy up! This album starts off with American Requiem, and let me tell you that this is an absolutely stunning intro. Maybe one of the best intros I've heard in music this year. This is how you start an album. This is how you introduce a sound. This makes me feel like I'm sitting down to experience something life-changing. I love how just larger-than-life Beyonce sounds here. I love how woozy and psychedelic this strummed riff comes off. And let me tell you, she lets this track breathe. It's over 5 minutes long, but that does it so much justice. The pacing is expertly done. This track's chorus gives me the damn chills. The gospel influence is absolutely breathtaking. Hell of an intro. Now, while obviously this is a very different sound for Beyonce, this is her going in a very shiny, poppy country direction, which I walk around on eggshells usually with, but she has done it so much justice on this album. She went into this not just, clinging to something that's modern and hip. No, a lot of the music on this album has done with a lot of appreciation. Yeehaw! Like I said, I do really enjoy 16 Carriages. I have since it was a single. It's a dusty, soulful ballad that has this sort of old school, very pop country sound to it that's really well done. Lyrically, this is a really fascinating look at some of Beyonce's teenage years, something that I'll always be interested in. And while it's maybe not the most explosive cut, Beyonce's vocal performance is tremendous. Protector featuring Rumi Carter, honestly, this is one of the best ballads I've heard all year. Once again, it's stripped down, it's dusty, got that old school rustic sound to it. It's also got a lot of really nice harmonies to it. And on top of that, it's one of the most sincere and heartwarming ballads that I have heard all year. I mean, she went above and beyond. And let me tell you, this is the kind of track that could have gotten really cheesy, really fast, but it's done very well. My hat is off. It is absolutely beautiful. And Texas Hold'em, say what you want. I think the track's a banger. Call it country, call it whatever the hell you want. This just, to me, just comes off as a big Beyonce single, and it's a really good one. It's got the charisma, it's got the sass, it's got the personality, and yeah, it's a little poppy. I mean, listen, if you hear that fiddle and the fluttering riff and the whistles on that hook, very well might get on your nerves, but I think this is really fun. I love the stripped down, very old school instrumental once again that's based all around this big old piano beat. And it kind of sounds like an old school sort of folky country singer-songwriter track, but modernized, and Beyonce does that really well. There are some sultry moments, there are some sweet moments, all done with the amount of charisma that you would expect. And Jolene, the Dolly Parton cover that we get here, I mean, we'll chat about the Blackbird cover in a few minutes, but this one I think is done really, really well. This is so tasteful. I mean, it's definitely a modernized version of this track. I love Beyonce's lyric changes, but it's done with so much respect. This is how you cover a true classic on an album like this. Also really like Spaghettii featuring Linda Martell and Shaboozey. This track here brings a certain drama and intensity to this album that I was not expecting. It's definitely one of the more hip-hop leaning tracks on this album, but that gives Beyonce a little room to breathe and really freak out, and she sounds all fired up here. Like, she sounds like a damn boss on this track. She brings so much personality as well. It's a shot out of left field, and it's honestly a great one. Also, really love Alliigator Tears. Truth be told, I think this track could have been a single. I love how sultry and smoky it comes off. It's bulky, and I really do love this instrumental. One of the most, really immediate and memorable ones here. Beyonce, to me, really did approach this sound with a lot of respect, and she sounds locked in. Now, we gotta talk about some things. Now, I'm just gonna be blunt. I do really like this album quite a bit, and I think that she did this whole sound really, really well. But this thing is 27 tracks and almost an hour and a half long, and some of that is a little fluffier than I'd like. Like the Blackbird cover that we get here. I mean, I respect this track, from a distance, because Beyonce here takes a list of, lesser known black country artists who are out there to give them some, to give them the respect that they deserve, which is awesome. And I've been so glad to see their streams, really boost after this album's release. I just think that she could have done something better as far as a track, maybe something more organic, not a cover. But it's far from the worst sin committed here, and honestly, Beyonce's heart was in the right place, truthfully. Daughter really upset me as well, just because the ballads on this album have been some of its brightest moments. Lyrically, this is still a gut punch, and in Beyonce's own way, this is certainly her fired up. But this track isn't as memorable. Instrumentally, easily one of the most phoned-in tracks here. I mean, Beyonce's heart is once again in the right place, but I don't think that this instrumental can really hold up to her performance here. Like, this album has been so expertly crafted with respect, and then I hear a track like this, and I'm actually kind of shocked it made the cut. Honestly, I'm not that into Just for Fun featuring Willie Jones either. Once again, the ballads here have been so good, and then I hear a track like this, and it's just so average. Lyric-wise, still in a good place, not really gonna focus on that for a track like this. But this instrumental is probably the least memorable here, and I'm not as crazy as Willie Jones's feature as other features here. We also have Levi's Jeans featuring my buddy Post Malone, and I think it's the worst track here. God, this is so sloppy, and lyrically up to this point we've been in such a good spot. I've almost let my guard down, but we are talking about a track here that is trying so hard to be just so sultry and sexy and not hitting the mark. This instrumental's one of the most bland here, and Beyonce and Post Malone do not have any chemistry, sadly. And Post, who I respect, I think the man's grown a lot in the last couple of years. He sounds lost. Also, Two Hands to Heaven. I mean, I don't know if I was just tired by this point in the album, but this track, it felt like it was trying so hard to be huge, but missing the mark. Lyrically, this track doesn't seem to have any direction, nor does the instrumental. And let me tell you, at 5 minutes and 41 seconds, this is the longest cut here. Don't know why. This track just seems a little bit of an afterthought to me. I will say this, though. It does have a serious cinematic edge to it that I do appreciate. Now, there are also so many interludes. A lot of this album has this loose concept of, you're kind of listening to an old school, country radio station. I know that leading up to this, Beyonce said that she was influenced by Houston radio stations growing up. And, a lot of this album has that concept and that feeling to it. And sometimes it's done really well. But it's also sometimes done without a care in the world, like My Rose, which for an instrumental interlude, honestly, I didn't even know this track was here. I mean, it's pleasant on the ears, but that's about it. But the first Smoke Hour interlude featuring Willie Nelson does, I think, a lot for this album. Like, when interludes are done well like this, it really does give you that old school radio vibe to it, and it's really cool and refreshing. But then we have the Dolly P interlude, and this sounds like it was recorded in one take without a care in the world. The second Smoke Hour interlude with Willie Nelson, not nearly as interesting or good for this album's concept as the first one. The Linda Martell Show, it's a fine interlude. It actually does a good job of, hyping up one of this album's best tracks, Ya Ya. The bizarreness of Oh Louisiana really actually does sell me. We just get a warped rendition of Chuck Berry's Oh Louisiana, and let me tell you, I wish Beyonce did more weird stuff like this. Desert Eagle, too. A lot of the same thoughts. This track is warped and genuinely bizarre. Not only that, but Beyonce sounds like a freaking boss on top of it. It's groovy, it's weird as anything, it's really memorable. I wish she took more risks like this. This album's, really, really long. And needlessly long, too. But, that being said, while albums like this are very hard for me to rate at the end of the day, most of this album's pretty freaking great. Like Two Most Wanted, featuring Miley Cyrus. This is so nice. This is such a great surprise. This is the surprise I needed. Huge part of this album has been those ballads, and let me tell you, this is a really good one. The part and the passion on this track, it's so needed. It's so respectful. And that's coming from both sides, Beyonce and Miley Cyrus, who brings her A+ game. Instrumentally, I'm going to be honest, it's not really why I've enjoyed hearing this album. It's a little lopsided, but their heart and passion and delivery on this track make it a knockout. While Flamenco is short and sweet, it absolutely has a place here. It's a stripped-down, breezy track with vocal harmonies to die for. It's simple and it's really, really memorable. And on Ya Ya, Beyonce just doesn't care about the campiness, completely drops the shark, has a freaking blast, and maybe puts out the song of the album. I think it is. Of all the tracks here, this feels larger than life. This feels like a celebration. And let me tell you, Beyonce lets loose, because her vocal performance here, one of her best. It's fiery, it's wild-eyed, I don't know what's going to happen at any second. I love the interpolations of these boots were made for walking and good vibrations. And not only am I having fun, I challenge you to find another track on this album where Beyonce is having as much fun. Riiverdance is also very, very memorable. It's sultry, it's pretty sexy. I love the flirtatious lyrics, I love the upbeat rip, and I love that beat bumping in the background. I feel like this album needed a track like this to sort of bridge the gap. Tyrant isn't the most, groovy or wild or even beautiful moments here, but it is one of the most anthemic tracks here. I mean, that hook is infectious, and that bumping beat that comes in, yes please. Charisma on display, that big, big hook. This track is genius. We also get Sweet Honey Buckiin featuring Shaboozey once again. Now, Shaboozey has had a few features on this album. This is by far his most prominent and his best feature. Once again, this track's pretty wild. I once again wish that we got more risks like this. This beat, there is no stopping it. It is just constantly shifting, super colorful. It's one of the wildest and most adventurous tracks here, but Beyonce sounds completely in control of it. And Amen has a finale. I mean, the gospel influence. Once again, I've said it for years. When you add gospel to modern music, if done well, it could be absolutely jaw-dropping. That's what we get here. It's classy. Beyonce's performance is fantastic. There's a sense of finality. I love the callbacks to American Requiem. It's a fantastic finale. This album is really hard to rate just because the bulk of it is very, very good. The bulk of it is done really respectfully, tastefully, and just done with so much love and passion. And it's a pretty big leap. And for Beyonce to have done all of this on her first project in this vein, it's nothing short of impressive. But I'm also looking at an album that's 27 tracks long. Oh my God, almost an hour and a half, and I don't think it needed to be that. Yes, this album's really impressive. There's so much great material here, so much material that is respectful and just culturally significant. But I personally think that Renaissance is a better album. And I personally think that this album could have been trimmed down a little bit. But for now, I'm feeling a very, very strong 7 on this album. But let me know what you all think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.